Welcome to Front Office Pros. We're going to be talking about part 2 of our series of our 2023 Dynasty Startup Draft with rookies. I'm here with my co-manager, Dustin Ludke. Last time you saw us, if you haven't watched it, you can watch part 1. We went through picks 1 through 5 for us in the first 5 rounds. So, Dustin, where do we leave off, and where are we going from here, heading into the 5th round and beyond?
So in the 5th round, we took our first rookie pick, which is the 207. This is a dynasty best ball draft. So we ended with rookie pick, which will be the 107 in the rookie draft. That's where we left off in part 1. We now come into part 2. And since our pick, what we've seen is Deontay Johnson go, Deshaun Watson, the 108, George Pickens, the 109, George Kittle, the 110, Aaron Jones, Jahan Dotson, starting the 6th round, Christian Kirk, Rashad Bateman, Calvin Ridley, A.J. Dillon. I believe that's the 111. Amari Cooper, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders, James Cook, and it comes back to us at the 610, and we took DeAndre Hopkins of the question mark team going into 2023.
Yeah, and I think, when it comes to strategy, why we ended up going with Hopkins. Dustin and I both like to trade, so that is one of the reasons why we did it. But it's in startup drafts, it's a good strategy to invest in players that you can expect a certain amount of buzz going on in the offseason. Now, it's a gamble on our part. If DeAndre Hopkins gets traded to the Patriots, people are going to be like, I don't really want him. But if he gets traded to, say, the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers stays, okay, now we're talking. If he gets traded to the Buffalo Bills, okay, now we're talking. So having Hopkins in our roster, it helps us moving forward because he is a great player. He is a little bit older. We are targeting that win now mode. So he fits that profile. But if we need to pivot at any point during the year or possibly closer to the trade deadline, if we decide to hold on to him, I think we could get a good amount for him.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're still getting a quality player. It's not like we're taking some sleeper unknown. We're taking DeAndre Hopkins, who has top 5 wide receiver potential. So even if he stays on our team forever until he's done, he will be a good wide receiver for us. He's our 3rd wide receiver behind CeeDee Lamb, behind Jerry Jeudy. Gives us that depth. We only have to start one. We have a bunch of flex spots. But I agree with you. That buzz could get really high. He could be the Tyreek Hill, the A.J. Brown of this offseason, where they went to a spot and people were super excited, clamoring to get them. That remains to be seen. We're still very early in the offseason. We haven't even got to the combine. We haven't got to the draft. We haven't started free agency. So his value can only go up from here. Yes, he's older. We're in a win now, so if he stays on our team, he'll help us. But he does provide that buzzworthy pick that we like.
Yeah, before we transition over through the remaining of the 6th round, Dustin, was there anybody that you were surprised that was taken in between our picks in the 5th and 6th round?
We really liked Amari Cooper in the 5th round, and we had talked about him in previous videos. I was surprised to see him go. I was surprised to see Calvin Ridley, although I think he's still a value there at 6'3". I just thought with the unknown, generally people of fantasy football are recency bias, and he hasn't played in a year. Thought maybe he might fall to us in the 6th round. And then Miles Sanders. I love Miles Sanders. I've been on him all this season. He burnt me in the playoffs for fantasy. He's a free agent. I think he could land to a good spot. I was surprised he went this early, especially with guys like A.J. Dillon, James Cook, even Antonio Gibson, Rashad White were still on the board. For a guy who's going into a 2nd contract, doesn't know what team he's going to be on, to have those many question marks, was surprised to see him go there at 6'8".
Yeah, a lot of mystery around him. I think the one that I'm most surprised of is Rashad Bateman. I know there is a certain select group within the fantasy community that it's all about Bateman, but to me, it's like he's in a horrible offense. He doesn't. Sure, you could say, oh, he's got great target share, but he doesn't get a lot of targets because it's not a passing offense. It's run through Lamar Jackson, and he has injury issues. So I like the talent. I like the player. I don't like the situation. So to me, I agree. I liked Amari Cooper. Wish he could have fell to us. And at this point, we still don't have a quarterback. Any other thoughts before we move forward to the rest of the 6th round?
when we talked at the 6th round about Hopkins, we had talked about quarterback, but there was still a bunch we liked. So after Hopkins, it went David Montgomery, Kirk Cousins, Cortland Sutton, a rookie pick, which I believe is the 112. Gabe Davis, Mike Evans, then start the 7th round, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Russell Wilson, Tua Tagovailoa, Juju Smith-Schuster, another rookie pick, which I believe is the 113. And then it came to us at 7-7, and this is where we took our first quarterback in a 1-quarterback league in Trey Lance. I was super happy to have Lance available. We've been pushing off quarterback now for 7 rounds, and we had liked Russ, we'd liked Tua, we'd liked Trey Lance, and obviously getting one of them to fall to us. I wish Russ or Tua, who I liked a little more than Trey Lance, would have fallen. But again, when we're talking about buzz, this is a quarterback who had a lot of buzz in his rookie year, obviously got injured. Had a lot of buzz coming this year, got injured. Should have a lot of buzz going next year. Now, yes, Brock Purdy, at this point when we drafted them, was before the playoffs. So hindsight now looking back, and it might have been not a great pitch, but it's 50-50 if you look at some Twitter polls of who's going to start next year, whether it's Lance or Purdy. Now with Purdy being injured, I think Lance has the buzz. But if they decide to go with Purdy, they could trade Lance, which would send his value skyrocketing if he goes to the Raiders with Devontae Adams, if he goes to Tampa Bay with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Another player very much like DeAndre Hopkins, who is going to be solid for our team when he does play, but has that potential to value to skyrocket where he could be up there in that 4th round with like the Dax, that 3rd round with Kyler. He could be in that mix of those players if he's on a good team and is guaranteed to be the starter.
Yeah, you said that really well. I honestly, I don't know what else I can add really there. I agree entirely. I really like he's a buzz player. He fits that buzz player mentality like Hopkins. If he were to be moved, like there will be somebody. It's a 16-team league. Someone is going to be high on him. Maybe not all, but you only need one person to trade with. So he's going to have a lot of buzz. And you and I both like his potential. He really has only played, very little amount of games. So it's not like we have a huge sample size to say like, he's a boom or bust. He definitely, that was coming in, he played for, was it Division 3 or was it Division 2?
Yeah, it was a small school. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's either Division 3 or Division 2.
They're all the same at this point. I don't know.
But, I think that, he's got a lot of potential. So it'd be really interesting. I think at that point we needed to draft a quarterback.
Yes.
Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, Tua all had left. So at that point, it was like, if we wait again, we could be in dire straits. And he was a guy that I think we both felt had the most potential. And so we ended up going with him. Anyone you were surprised at between Hopkins and Lance?
Gabe Davis and Kadarius Toney are the 2 surprises for me. I guess in a best ball format, they have those big plays, but we haven't seen Kadarius Toney stay healthy. Like, if we're talking about Trey Lance not staying healthy, Kadarius Toney is just as bad. Sky Moore hasn't played at all. So seeing those back-to-back Kansas City wide receivers, obviously they're taking the upside that one of them is going to be the next Tyreek Hill. And Gabe Davis can have those games. We're both Bills fans. We know Gabe Davis can have a game where he catches 2 balls for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. Getting back to Trey Lance will be a starter for an NFL team in 2023. Guaranteed. You can lock that in right now. Steve, you can clip this, make it a YouTube short. He will be a starter for an NFL team in 2023, week 1. Guaranteed. There's no way he doesn't. The draft capital, whether that's San Fran, whether they trade him, they're not going to just bench him. We haven't seen it. It's not a Josh Rosen where we saw it for a year and the team got off him. We haven't seen it, so they don't know and they want to know. Also, with us taking Trey Lance, playing a little bit of strategy, we looked at the teams after us. Now, this is our long turn. We're 7. There's 16 teams in the league. There's a long stop before we get to our next pick. And 2 of the teams after us hadn't taken a quarterback yet. And we started to see teams take their second. So that's why we really prioritized a quarterback there in the 7th round, because we knew that there was other teams that either had one or had no quarterbacks. And we needed to take one now before they basically dried up. Seeing from our 6th pick to our 7th pick, seeing 3 of them come off the board, there was potential that 4 or 5 of them could have come off the board between 7 and 8.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to continue on what you're saying, I think I agree with you. I think I was wrong, I guess the jury's still out on Toney. I think he is showing himself to continue to be injury prone. I thought he was kind of, I don't say faking it, but trying to get out of New York. And now you're still seeing him having injury issues in Kansas City. That's concerning. And I was a little surprised by Sky Moore, but I agree with you. I think Trey Lance, at the end of the day, is going to be a starter. Who knows? You saw, the social media, you read into tweets or whatever else. There was that big, hubbub about the new GM for the Tennessee Titans was in the San Francisco organization. Trey Lance congratulated him. And they, people have speculated, are the Tennessee Titans going to, trade for Lance? So I agree with you. I think he's going to start somewhere. So going forward after that, we had, so the 7-8 was Antonio Gibson. Then Daniel Jones, Will Lutz, which is the 114 now, I think.
I think it's the 113, 114. Yeah,
another rookie pick. Rachaad White, Pat Freiermuth, tight end. Quarterback Jared Goff, which I know you liked a lot, Dustin. Another rookie pick, let's say 115. Elijah Moore, then Kenny Pickett, Brian Robinson, Tyler Lockett, Tyler Algier, Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet, Khalil Herbert, Dalton Schultz, 16, I think, 115.
That's about right.
And then Chase Claypool, and then it came to us, Dustin, at 8-10. We ended up going with Ezekiel Elliott. What's our thoughts there?
For me, at this pick, it was running back no matter what. I was really hoping either Rachaad White or Khalil Herbert would have fallen to us. I like both of them as young guys. When we talked about this pick, and this is where co-managing for me was a lot of fun because you were not a Zeke fan. I am a Zeke. I'm not Jerry Jones level Zeke believer, but I believe in Zeke's talent. Yes, he doesn't look as good, but we talked about that we're a win now squad, and Ezekiel Elliott should still be the lead back in Dallas in 2023. Tony Pollard's a free agent. There's potential now with his broken leg that happened after we made this pick that he could come back. I didn't think it was possible when we made this pick. I thought Pollard was gone. Zeke's still going to get a good workload, and he's still going to be efficient. He's not as efficient as he was, but he's good enough. We only need to start one running back. So I just need a game or two of him scoring 2 touchdowns. He's going to be in our lineup either as our running back or a flex. Looking at the other running backs available there, it was older guys, Zeke, Fournette, James Conner, or it was young, unproven guys, Pacheco, guys like Alexander Madison, who looks to possibly be a starter this year if he gets something, Zamir White, and then you had a bunch of free agents, Kareem Hunt, Damian Harris. This point in the draft, with we're trying to win now, I want as few question marks as possible. We know the team, we know the workload. All we just don't know is the efficiency. So that's one question mark. With someone like Kareem Hunt, we don't know the efficiency. We don't know the team. We don't know the workload. That's 3 question marks. I don't want that. Give me the guy that has proven it. Yes, he's come down a little bit, but I don't think he's going to fall off the Todd Gurley cliff where he's good and then just absolute trash. So I guess I kind of talked you into Ezekiel Elliott a little bit here, Steve, because you're not a huge fan of him. But I think as a win now team, he's a great compliment for someone like Najee Harris. And the rest of our build, we had 3 running backs. We got our quarterback just to fit in there and to be possibly an every week player for us. If he has a down week, it's not a huge loss.
Yeah, and I think this is a great example of how, whether you participate in a snake draft or an auction draft, like, yes, it's important to go into the draft with a strategy. You want to think about how you want to approach the draft. So definitely do that prep time and consider, based on where you're drafting or just, maybe keepers or what have you, how you're going to navigate the draft. Going into the draft, we were like, hey, running backs, there's injuries all the time. Random ones pop off all the time. So going into the draft, we were going robust RB. That was the plan.
Yep. That was the plan.
We were not going to go hero RB. We weren't going to spend that high draft capital, and we weren't going to go zero RB.
We didn't go. We took CeeDee Lamb in the first round. We could have taken Jonathan Taylor or Breece Hall if we wanted to, but we decided to go robust.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then at that point, when it came down the 3rd round, Najee Harris was just there for the taking. And at that point, we both viewed Najee very highly. which almost was like, okay, we kind of see him as he's not like the ultimate hero, but he's a semi-hero for
Yep.
us. So we're going to go and take him. And then as the draft went on, for me, I started thinking to myself, man, I see all because in this league you only have to start one, and then there's a bunch of flex, and it's a best ball league. So whoever does best is going to go in that flex. So I think the with the co-managing piece, where I think you and I were at a crossroads, was I got to the point where I'm like, maybe we just go zero RB. Like I to me, it was like we've got some other guys out there that I think based on best ball, based on receivers and tight ends, they're gonna get into that flex and it's better off. And I think based on that conversation we had, we were like, let's not go full out zero RB. We need to have some guys in the stable. And that's where Zeke is. He's going to probably only play for maybe relevant for maybe a year, two tops.
Yeah.
But you know who he is. You know what you can expect from him. And so as a result, that's what made us go with the pick.
Yeah. And Dallas wants to run the ball. Like that's the DNA of their team. That's the DNA of Mike McCarthy. We've seen it year after year with Dak, and they included Pollard in this year. I think Zeke is that type of guy who can get on your team who will he'll be fine. Like it's not the flashy pick, and I think that's where we see a lot of people just get excited about the flash. They want this high upside guy. They want the guy like 2 picks later, Jamal Williams, who had this great year this year but hasn't proven it. They want the rookie or the second-year guy because they're like, he's the next X. He's the next great thing. He's the next Adrian Peterson. He's the next LaDainian Tomlinson. I don't need the next LaDainian Tomlinson. Yeah, it's great to get that, but the odds of you hitting that are low. Give me the guy who's just consistent, who's going to have multiple touchdown games on a regular basis, who's going to get in our lineup more often than he's not in our lineup. And we're winning now, so we can take on some older pieces. If you look at our team construction, we went kind of younger early. Now, obviously, with Hopkins and Elliott, we're getting a little older, but we're in the 8th, 9th, 10th round. Like we can 6th round for Hopkins. Like we can take some of that risk with age, ride him out for 2 years. I think people look at Dynasty and go, I just want youth. I don't want these old guys because I'll never be able to trade them. I'm okay if Hopkins and Elliott are on our team till they retire because I don't think they're going to have this massive decline. Like they'll be good for 2-3 years, and then they'll be done. But when they're done, they're still going to have stuff left in tank. We're not going to see this. Like I keep going back to Todd Gurley, where he was great, and then played 1 year he was just absolute trash, and then hung it up. I don't think we get that out of these guys. If we do, and Zeke's horrible, like we've baked in some of that later on in the draft, like some contingency plans. But I think we at least get this year out of them.
Yeah, and I think that's a common. I don't know if it's a mistake or misconception. Like I totally understand in Dynasty fixating on age because if the player is younger, they're going to have a longer shelf life. And in Dynasty leagues where you don't have to, if you're not involving like a salary cap, you can keep those guys forever. So there's no forced roster turnover. So I can understand it, but I do think it can be a pitfall, and it's okay to take older players that can help you. And I think Ezekiel fits the bill. So before we transition over from our next pick, Dustin, any surprises in this stretch in between Lance and Elliott?
I was surprised at the amount of tight ends that are going. Yes, there is a tight end premium, so yes, they will get in, but we don't have a tight end designated spot. It's just flex. Seeing guys like Freiermuth, Komet, and Schultz go between our 2 picks surprised me, especially with Team 12 taking Freiermuth and Komet. You're really banking on those high upsides, and it's rare for tight ends to have those. Yes, every week there'll be a tight end that catches, 2 touchdowns, but it's never outside of Kelsey, Mark Andrews, it's not a consistent, it's going to be this guy. So seeing those go, and Schultz, who's probably going to be on a different team this year, was high. I think we're seeing other team strategy at this point. We see Team 10 now has, at this point, 1, 2, 3. They took their 3rd pick in Schultz, their 2nd tight end, no quarterback, or they got Kyler Murray, so they're still waiting on their 2nd quarterback. They've got 1 running back in Breece Hall at this point. They do take another one coming up. 1 actual wide receiver in Hollywood Brown, and then just a bunch of rookies. So they're clearly looks like to me playing for future years. It's just interesting to see other team strategies. I would have loved it if Rashad White or Khalil Herbert fell to us instead of Zeke because I
Yeah.
liked their upside. Wasn't surprised they didn't make it back. It would have been nice. I think in a draft, you're never going to get everyone you want. And I think that's the hard part. And I think that's where we've talked a lot of, would you rather have X player and Y player versus A player and B player? So we'll get into that a little bit later, but we talk about like, are both these guys going to get back to us? No. Okay, do we want this player and then this combination? And that's where you really have to talk. And that's why I found co-managing really helpful because we can bounce those ideas. Like, hey, Steve, would you rather have Lance and Elliott, or would you rather have, Rashad White and Jones or Derek Carr? And I think those things are in. Any surprises to you from Trey Lance to Zeke Elliott?
Yeah, really the only biggest question mark for me, I think, is Chase Claypool. I'm a little surprised how early he was taken. I was when he was first drafted by the Steelers. I mean, they're a wide receiver factory. I was really curious about how well he would do. I liked his profile, but after he got traded to the Bears, which I actually was high on that as well, he did nothing. So it's a huge leap on potential. And I just don't. I think it might be a round or two early, in my opinion.
I will say this is the third time now we've seen what I would consider one player getting drafted triggering another. So we saw it earlier with Christian Kirk, then 2 weeks later it was Calvin Ridley. We saw it with Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney, 2 Kansas City receivers. We saw Claypool get drafted at 8-9. I assume probably because someone drafted Darnell Mooney at 8-4, and they go, oh, that's a great pick. I really wish I had Darnell Mooney. Cool, there's some upside in that offense, and we see people buying into those offenses and buying multiple players, generally receivers, from that offense close to each other. It's the third time we've seen it. So we drafted Ezekiel Elliott. After us, it went Mac Jones at 8-11, Jamal Williams, Darren Waller, Michael Thomas, rookie pick, which I'm pretty sure is the 116, Alan Lazard, another rookie pick to start the 9th round, which I believe is the 201, Rondale Moore, Brandon Cooks, Romeo Dobbs, Aaron Rodgers, Jacoby Myers, and it comes to us at 9-7. And Steve, we took quarterback Derek Carr. Talk me through your thought process with Derek Carr, because I know you were really excited about having Derek Carr on our roster at this point.
Well, I think you might be misremembering this because you had to convince me quite a lot on said Derek Carr.
I was excited for Derek Carr.
Well, because I think I like the profile of player, but I think for me the concern was, where does he play? He's not going to play with the Vegas Raiders. In a previous video, I talked about how, based on his contract, I don't see him getting traded. I think he's gonna, now Rappaport said otherwise, and he knows more than me, but I could definitely see him getting cut. So you're talking about him being a bridge quarterback and possibly only playing for one more season. So to me, I had some serious concerns. I mean, Carr, we know what Carr is. Carr is anywhere from 12 to 17. So he's in the middle of the pack. But I think at that point, Aaron Rodgers went, Mac Jones went, Daniel Jones had gone quite earlier. I know you were a big Goff fan, and Pickett's gone. So I mean, speaking of Pickett, it's getting to the pickings. We didn't really have much left at quarterback, and it's not like Trey Lance is the most secure option either at this point. And so I think at the end of the day, there wasn't any screaming values to us at another position that says we need to go there. And I think that's how we ended up settling on Derek Carr. Again, like the player, this is where it's tough depending on when you do startup drafts. Had we done the startup draft in, April after the rookie draft, or even after free agency, we'd have a better idea of where these guys are going. But, right now we're in that mystery stage of we don't know what's going on. Maybe Carr goes to the Tampa Bay Bucks and all of a sudden we look like geniuses because now it's going to be Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Derek Carr. You just don't know. So it could turn to be great and it could be bad. We're gambling a little bit.
So apparently I convinced you on Carr. Let me convince you, the viewer, on Carr. We don't know where he's going, but he will start. He's, again, another sure starter in 2023 for an NFL team. Teams out there looking, Obviously, he's not going to play for the Raiders. You had Tampa Bay, possibly Green Bay if Rodgers gets traded. The Jets are in contention. Who knows who else? Like if Daniel Jones doesn't get signed by the Giants, he's contention there. There's potential that he could land, like you said, with Tampa Bay and have this all of a sudden a huge upside with Evans and Godwin and this great running game with Fournette and Rashad White. I mean, yes, he could go to Tennessee and not have great options, but we've seen Derek Carr on subpar teams and he's been okay. Like he's always been a top 12 quarterback. Again, it's best ball. We just need him to have a good game between him and Trey Lance. It's a veteran move for sure. When we had talked about it, and again, looking at the draft after us, teams are already starting to take their second quarterbacks. We've seen teams now with no quarterback still. We had talked about Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, Tom Brady. And for me, Carr's the most likely to start out of those three. Didn't know if Brady was going to still play. Don't know if Rodgers is still going to play. Like, I think at this point we were saying, yeah, all three of them are probably going to play. Spoiler for anybody who hasn't seen the news. Not the case anymore. As we're recording this, some news broke this morning. But Aaron Rodgers going, we had talked about possibly taking quarterbacks at 7, 8, 9, and 10 and doing a straight 4 quarterback run and just scooping them up as possible trade bait for all these teams who didn't have quarterbacks. We only need to start one. It's not super flex. But at this point in the draft, 1, 2, 3, I think 4 or 5 teams had 2 quarterbacks, and we only had one in Trey Lance, who was a question mark. I was on 70% chance that Trey Lance was going to start for the Niners. 99% chance he's starting. Oh, I was just saying 100% chance he's starting in the league. Derek Carr's the same way. He's going to start. He'll be just fine. It's not the exciting play, but it's a solid play.
And I think that's where, when you're drafting, yes, it's important to focus on your team. But my recommendation, and I do this a lot, is you also have to play defense. You have to look at the other teams in your league in their roster construction. We saw in the later half of the draft, there were at least more than one team that had no quarterbacks. And we're like, okay, do we just, like Dustin said, do we stack up on quarterback 7, 8, 9, 10 even, right? And just go boom, boom, boom. And then we have depth so that when people, there's going to be an injury. Injuries happen in the NFL. So if you have one quarterback and your one quarterback gets injured, you're in trouble. So for us, it was a strategy, but we ended up not going with that. We ended up, obviously going with Zeke and Derek Carr. But you have to consider playing defense. Don't be so concerned about the other teams that all you're doing is defense. You've got to stick to your strategy. You got to go with what you planned. But there's also an element of playing defense.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of tier-based drafting. And like I said, Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, Tom Brady were in that tier for us. I never want to be at the end of a tier run. I always want to be in the start of a tier, and especially the start of a run. So if I see a run of quarterbacks possibly coming, I was saying that, hey, between 9-7 and 10-10, there could be 4 quarterbacks, 5 quarterbacks, and I only have 2 left in this tier. Let me get in now and not drop down a tier in 10. I want to be able to be either at the top of the run or at the end of the run, not at the end of the run. Because if you're at the end of the run, you're just taking what's left, and a lot of times you end up dropping down a tier. So we talked about this, like these are our 3 that are in this tier. After that, we thought it was clearly a drop down. Let's get in on the tier now because there was no way we thought Carr and Brady were going to return to us. We play the risk, but you got to play the board. You got to look at their construction and go, hey, team 8's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 running backs. Cool, they've got 2 wide receivers. What are they going to do? They're probably taking a wide receiver. Now they end up taking a running back and bucking that trend. But you can logically think that out, right? Hey, there's a good chance this team takes a wide receiver. There's a good chance this team takes a quarterback. This team's got 2. They're not taking a quarterback, and play that out. Put yourself in their shoes of what they're thinking or what you think they're thinking. You're going to get some of it wrong. We all do. But if you can play that defense and play that strategy and be part of the early end of a run and in the early end of a tier, you benefit from because you're not getting lower end guys just because you're stuck because you have no one left.
So before we go to our last stretch of players, any surprises in between Zeke and Carr?
I was surprised to see now this is team specific, to see team 3 take both Michael Thomas and Brandon Cooks. They started out with Jefferson, Travis Kelce, Devontae Smith. 3 rookie picks, then Russell Wilson. Then they took what I consider, I guess, the oldest and probably the most volatile projection-wise players out there. We haven't seen Michael Thomas play football in, it seems like 3 years. I mean, it might be 3 years. Brandon Cooks isn't going to be on Houston. He's going to be on a new team, most likely. He doesn't seem to want to be there. For me, it's just too much risk in 2 picks. I'm fine with taking one of those, but then I want some assurances. That's where I'm like, hey, how many question marks does this player have? Let me find the guy who's got the least amount of question marks in that tier. I think Michael Thomas, Alan Lazard, Brandon Cooks, Romeo Doubs, they are all in that same tier. Who's got the least amount of question marks for me? For me, it's probably Romeo Doubs. You know this. You know what team he's going to be on. You've seen his talent. Michael Thomas, we haven't seen the talent. We don't know who the quarterback is. Lazard, we don't know where he's playing, so we don't know who his quarterback is. Rondale Moore, we really haven't seen it. Kyler Murray's probably not going to be ready for the season. Brandon Cooks, we don't know where he's playing, and we don't know what he's got left in the tank. So I want less question marks. And that's part of my best ball strategy is like, give me the least amount of question marks, because the more question marks to me, the more volatility they have. Yes, they may be more boom bust, but I want consistency. I get it, it's best ball and those boom bust players there, but at this point in the draft, in these 9, 10, 11, 12 rounds, I want that consistency of a guy who can be there. Maybe he's our 3rd flex play every week, but I'll take that over a guy who's your top flex play and then 1 week and then misses your lineup because he just sucks.
See, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I think Brandon Cooks was one of the guys I was somewhat interested in. I don't know if he stays on Houston, and he has been a pretty, other than last year, obviously didn't have a good year, but generally he's been a pretty consistent top 30-ish receiver, and can have his moments. Michael Thomas, I'm with you on it. I've been off Michael Thomas for a while. The 2 that I weren't a fan of, though, was Rondale Moore and Lazard, especially Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore, I think I didn't like him from the beginning because his height. I honestly thought he was going to be more of a gadget player. He got more involved in that offense after the fact, but you're talking about a regime change. So Kingsbury's gone. We don't know who the head coach is yet. When you come into a new regime, if Rondale Moore doesn't fit that offense and what they want to do, he's done. So to me, I don't like the prospects of Rondale Moore going forward. I mean, he's an electric player. He did have some really good games last year, but I'm very concerned about his environment going forward. And with Lazard, I think Rodgers might be gone. And if Rodgers is gone, do I really want Lazard?
I think Lazard's a free agent. I think he's gone too.
Oh, interesting. See, even more. But if there's a free agent, then wouldn't you rather have Jacoby Myers over Lazard? I'd take Myers all day long over Lazard.
Yes. And so let me clarify. Like, I like Brandon Cooks. I just don't like the combination of both Michael Thomas and Brandon Cooks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I don't want both of those players on my team because it's 2 players that have similar risks in back-to-back rounds. It's like taking one player that has all these risks. Like, let me take one or the other. I would have much rather had that team drafted Romeo Doubs and Brandon Cooks. I'd be like, man, that's great play because you're getting that young rookie upside and you're getting a consistency with Cooks. Getting both of them for me is just poor strategy. And so after our Derek Carr pick, at the 908, it was Kareem Hunt, then Alexander Madison, then a rookie pick, which I think is the 202.
Yeah.
Wan'Dale Robinson, Isaiah Pacheco, Alex Pierce, Bills tight end Dawson Knox, who's one of my favorite players in the NFL right now. James Conner, Dawson Knox, I love him. Then it was James Conner, Nico Collins. Start the 10th round, Tyquan Thornton for the Patriots, Josh Palmer, John Mechie, Donovan Peoples-Jones, another rookie pick. Then Jordan Love, Damian Harris, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Zamir White, and then for us at 10-10, we took playoff Lenny, Leonard Fournette. What were your thoughts of taking Fournette here? Because I know you were talking Fournette to me for a couple rounds now.
Yeah, I've always, you have to be careful because you definitely have bias, and Fournette's just one of those guys for me that is a soft spot, and I just zero in on him. I think he'll be a cap casualty this year, and now some would say this doesn't matter. He is older, but if you look at mileage, he has not had nearly as many carries or total yards compared to the likes of his counterparts in the age department. So like Ezekiel Elliott, Christian McCaffrey. So to me, a part of why age is a problem is the wear and tear and just so much mileage that these running backs end up accumulating. So I think that in a way, I think Leonard Fournette could be preserved, for the future. You heard him come out and say that he had some sort of injury this year. I forgot what it was. Was it plantar fasciitis or something? I can't remember what it was, but it's something of that sort that that slowed him down. I think he's a similar player to Ezekiel Elliott, and I think once we bought into the let's get some impact players at running back position, maybe a little bit older that we think that could end up being in our lineup a few times. He fits the bill like Zeke. So once we already went with Zeke, I'm like, let's double down and go for Fournette. I get why people would be interested in Zamir White. I get why people would be interested, in a even like a Khalil Herbert way earlier, right? But we're so early right now. Yes, it looks like they'll be the starters, but this free agency class of running backs is probably the best we've seen in a long time.
Yep.
This running back draft class, to me, from what I'm seeing and what I've heard around the league, from around the industry, it's deep. So to me, I'd rather have Fournette, who I think could be in the mix somewhere, whereas Zamir White, I'm not even sure if he's going to see the ball.
Yeah, this was another we're in win now. Let's get those guys. I think Fournette stays on Tampa Bay. He doesn't have a huge they don't save a ton of money by cutting them. I think he loses carries to Rachaad White, who I really like, but I still think he gets in there. He's a bigger back, so goal line work can be there. If he comes in and pulls a Jamal Williams and just has a game where he has 10 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns because he gets that goal line work, that's great for best ball. Touchdowns are king in best ball. Yes, it's very much like I was just railing against Michael Thomas and Brandon Cooks, and we got Zeke and Fournette, but separated by a round. And that's where, again, when we talk about these tiers, we saw Damian Harris, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Zamir White go off before us. We took the 4th running back in this run of running backs, but for me, I think he's a tier above those guys. We've seen it. We haven't. Clyde Edwards-Helaire for me is done. I think he's toast. I don't see him having a job. I don't know where he goes. Damian Harris is a free agent. Zamir White, sure, he looks good. And we had talked about James Conner as well, one of those other older running backs who went in the end of the 9th round. I would have loved it if Pacheco fell to us, but let me take a guy and see what he can do. And it's best ball, so he just needs to have a good week. And we had talked about roster construction. We felt really good about our wide receivers in CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, and DeAndre Hopkins, and that 107 that could be possibly a young wide receiver. We thought we went in saying we're going to do robust RB. We kind of went to a hero-ish with Najee Harris, but now we're hey, let's go back to this robust kind of thought process of let's just start stockpiling our team. And Steve, me and you talked about what does our final roster look like? How many quarterbacks? How many running backs do we need? How many wide receivers we want to see? How many tight ends we want to see because we have no spot, designated tight end spot. So that's where we started looking at what our final roster construction to be and where's the best value. And so I'm happy with Leonard Fournette. I think he's like you said, a very similar player to Ezekiel Elliott. But after 10 rounds, I'm liking where our team's at. We've got 3 running backs, 2 quarterbacks, 3 wide receivers, a tight end in Kyle Pitts, who I think will be in the flex play. And we have a rookie pick that is the 107 that I think really is a swing spot in this rookie draft. We've got guys in Lance, Hopkins, and that rookie pick that could garner a lot of buzz. Even Derek Carr could get a lot of buzz. So we have some potential for value increasing this offseason, which allows us to get value in the draft or possibly trade them to capitalize on some other values that we like. We've even gotten some trade offers that we've declined, but we've seen people interested in those guys based on their team build. So I'm happy with our draft after 10 rounds. Steve, how do you feel about our team after 10 rounds?
Yeah, I think, as I was listening to you, I think we'll get even more into this, as we go into part 3. But I think that conversation of what do we want our build to be really started to pick up in that part 3 section, because right now this is generally the base, right? Like this is we've got the structure built, we've got our main pieces. We got the kitchen, the living room, right? We're just talking about some other extra spaces in the house. So for me, it's like I think what we have is a competitive roster, the way that we've constructed it currently. Now we just have to really dial in on these later picks and see if we can't strike gold a few times.
I really like your house analogy you just made there. And for me, Leonard Fournette is the second spare bedroom in a house, right? You've got the bedroom that you and your significant other are in. Maybe you got a room for your one kid, and you've got one spare bedroom for the in-laws come, but then you have the second spare bedroom. You need 2 spare bedrooms. I have 2 spare bedrooms in my house. It gets used all the time because I snore, my wife goes downstairs, or the cat and the dog. You don't need a second spare bedroom because it doesn't get used that often. But when you do need it, it's super nice to have. And I feel like that's what we're looking at. Yes, could we convert that second spare bedroom into a library or a den or, who knows what? Like when you start talking about adding rooms on this house, like it may not seem functional and practical, but having a second spare bedroom when you need it is super nice. It's not always great when you don't need it, but when you do need it, it is so nice to have. And I think that's a great analogy, and I love our team. I think it is. Now we can start adding those extra rooms. We can start adding on this back deck. We can start adding a pool and a hot tub. We can start adding a conservancy. We can add a billiards room. We can add those things later on, but we need to get the foundation of our house done now. And I think that's what we did. And I really like that analogy you came up with.
Hey,
looking forward to part 3. Just a reminder that this is a industry draft. It's a bunch of people in the industry. We've obviously taken their names out just to protect them. It is an ongoing draft. So these picks were made in early January, just for reference. So when you're watching this, just know that's when we made it, because obviously the league changes so fast. We made these picks in January. The draft is still ongoing as we're recording this video. So part 3 is coming. We're going to record that soon. But just know, like, things change. So when we see the Trey Lance, and then, after we made that pick, Brock Purdy was in the playoffs. So we made these picks before playoffs, as playoffs were going. So news will change as you watch this. If you watch this video in a week, Derek Carr could be somewhere else when you watch this video based on when we're recording it. But when we made the pick, it was early January, mid-January. So I want to throw that as reference because I think that is important when we're talking about rookie picks and some of these guys like Derek Carr, Derek Carr is going to get moved within 2 days of the Super Bowl because that's the deadline for his guaranteed money. So in real time, as we're recording this, that's a week and a half away. Time we made that pick, that was 3 weeks prior to when we recorded. So keeping that time frame in mind for this draft that we're doing, Dynasty Best Ball 16-team draft. And this is not a mock draft. This is a real league that we're in. We're co-managing with other people. It's a charity league. So all the money, we're each going to put in $5 in the winner. It goes to their charity. So there is something on stake. But this is not a mock draft. This is a team that me and Steve are going to manage for however long the league's around. We're hoping for the next 10, 15 years. So just know that this is not a mock draft. This is real players that we're really going to have on our team. No waivers in this league, so we can't make waivers, but we can make trades. So we're going to make that context clear as we head into part 3.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful context. So I think that's going to be really helpful for our viewers as they understand why these decisions are made, especially when you watch it. It's not, we're doing this in real time based on where our draft is going. And so when you watch it, some of these things will have happened, and spoiler alert, you'll see a little bit what happens in part 3. But before we wrap up, any surprises to you between Carr and Fournette?
There was one. Team 11, their first quarterback is Jordan Love.
I feel the same way.
When this pick came through, we were texting and like, what are they thinking? At this point, Brady's on the board, Desmond Ritter's on the board, some of those other young guys. They seem to be really banking on Rodgers not being in Green Bay and Green Bay rolling with Jordan Love. I get waiting. We waited to round 7. Team 13 rated to round 7. Team 14 still doesn't have a quarterback, but has the 101 pick. So theoretically, they're going to get a Bryce Young or a CJ Stroud. But for your first quarterback to be Jordan Love, strategically, was a shocker. I thought he could have waited to get Jordan Love like 2-3 rounds later.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe they know something we don't.
Yeah, it's possible. I think for me, it's way too risky. Like you're talking about having one quarterback and having it being Love. Love is not even a guaranteed starter. So if
Yes.
that happens heading into the new league year, you're talking about having, and you don't have rookie picks. You have no rookie picks. You can't
No
draft
rookie
one
picks.
either. So you don't have any rookie picks to draft anybody. You have not even a surefire starter. You're gonna have to trade for. You're gonna have to trade for one, and if you trade for
Yeah.
one, you only have one guy. So to me, it's a very, I don't know. There's no way that team is going to stay as currently constructed, I would think.
I would assume not either. And looking at their other build, AJ Brown, Cooper Cup, Dalvin Cook are older players. Amari Cooper's an older player. He's got some youth in, Drake London, George Pickens, Rashad White, Herbert, Wanda Robinson. Got the youth in Jordan Love, but also let's be real. Jordan Love's been in the league for 3 years, and we've seen very limited of him. Like it's not like he's a second year player. He's a third or fourth year player who we haven't seen, and no one knows what he is. It just from a strategy standpoint seemed odd to me that if you're going to wait that long, you take someone who's not guaranteed to be a starter. What I liked about Elliott, Carr, Fournette that we picked, and Trey Lance, like they're guaranteed starters in the league.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that Jordan Love plays next year.
No. Yeah. So very puzzling. So hope you enjoyed watching part 2 of our Startup 2023 Draft 16-team league best ball, and we got a couple more parts heading your way here in the next few weeks. So if you enjoyed this content, we do ask you to please subscribe and go ahead and put some comments below. What do you think of our teams? You liked our team? What do you think? What was the best value? Or what did you think was the biggest reach based on some of the picks we talked about? I would love.
Where do you think Derek Carr is going to play?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's everyone's wondering about that. So thanks so much for watching, and until next time.